We are not formally educated in any of the topics we will be discussing in this podcast. Neither are we claiming to be experts by any means. These are our opinions, and none of it is intended to be taken factually. I would also like to state that this podcast contains strong language and humor that might offend. Listener discretion is advised. In this podcast, we dive into the hidden mysteries of everyday life. Those strange, quirky, and sometimes baffling questions that most people don't even think to ask. From the unexplained phenomenon right under your nose to the odd facts buried in the back of your mind, we're here to explore the curious corners of the world around us. Whether it's religion, spirituality, or science, they all have something to say about who we are, where we came from, and the powers of the universe. The truth has to be somewhere in between. Welcome to the Riddles of Reality.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Riddles of Reality podcast. I'm Sarah.
And I'm Jaden.
And today we're going to be talking about
the 7 new wonders of the world.
So last episode, we talked about the 7 ancient wonders of the world. Only one of the 7 ancient wonders of the world is still standing for us today, and that's the Pyramid of Giza. Jaden, would you be so kind as to tell us the 7 new wonders of the world, or spit any facts that you have for us?
Yes, I will. I'll list them and then I'll brief them.
Okay.
Like we did last time.
Okay.
We have the Great Wall of China, Chichen Itza, Petra, Machu Picchu, Christ the Redeemer, the Colosseum, and the Taj Mahal. Now, before I brief them, I just wanted to say that I looked up how these were determined. And apparently in 2000, there was a vote. And people submitted their vote either by over the internet or by a text message. The final results weren't announced until 2007, but 100 million votes were cast. But I just think it's crazy that they determined the 7 wonders by a text message vote.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, and I just want to say that I don't agree with all of these being a 7 wonder, but that can be after I brief. Okay, so first up, we have the Great Wall of China. I will say that I agree with this one, actually. Yes. Built in 220 BC, and it took 2 millennia to build. And it was widely thought to be 5,500 miles long, but long disputed Chinese studies claim that it is actually a little over 13,000 miles. It was built to prevent invasions and raids, but it failed to do so. It served as more political propaganda. I think this one's valid.
100%.
13,000-mile wall, absolutely.
Yeah, and you said it took them 3 millennia to finish it? 2 millennia to finish. I think that's definitely worthy of being a 7th wonder of the world. But you know what I think's interesting? The whole purpose of them building that wall, according to history, was for war purposes and to keep bandits and things like that out.
Yeah.
And it didn't at all.
You build a 13,000-mile wall, you think you don't really have enough people to cover all 13,000 miles of it. So it makes sense that people were able to invade some spot.
Yeah.
Like climb over
like
it.
Go around.
Yeah. But what I also think is crazy is how, and this is like still determined, like they still don't have a definitive number on how long this wall is, at least where I was looking, which I was looking on Britannica and CNN.
Yeah.
I guess it's still like an argument that some people were like, no, it's only 5,500 miles. And then others are like, no, it's 13,000 miles.
Why is that a debate?
Well, don't you think they would just be able to look at it like up in a helicopter or something and see?
How come we still don't have this sorted yet?
That's what
This is pretty
like
easy for us today to figure out.
People just might not care if you think about it.
The Chinese want it to be 13,000 miles.
Yeah.
The rest of the world just want the facts.
Right.
So they're probably the ones saying, no, you can't come measure it. But you do have a good point, couldn't they? Because you can see it from space.
Mm-hmm.
So if you know it's from this starting point to this end point, and you're able to take a photo of it in space, I'm pretty sure you could calculate the exact mileage.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It must just be on the back burner. Or they know and it doesn't sound so great. So they're like, oh, 13,000.
Maybe you're right. Maybe it's only 130 miles.
Oh my God. Right? I guess we would never know. Okay, so you also agree that this one is valid?
Absolutely. 100%.
Okay. Moving on to the next one, which is Chichen Itza. And I didn't have a lot of prior knowledge to this before I
Yeah.
researched it. Like, I had heard of it, but I wasn't fully aware of what it actually was. So it is a Mayan city in Mexico, which flourished in the 9th and 10th centuries CE. The most famous part of Chichen Itza, which is actually really what they considered the seventh wonder,
Okay.
is El Castillo, also known as the castle. It's a 79-foot stepped pyramid, which, once again, this goes into the discussion we had last episode about stepped pyramids and
Yeah.
how a lot of the wonders were stepped pyramids. So that's crazy. It has 365 steps, which is also the number of days in the solar year. And I guess the people who had lived in Chichen Itza were very educated in astronomy. So,
Really?
yeah, which was really interesting because it does say that during the spring and autumn equinoxes, the setting sun casts shadows that look like a serpent is slithering down the north stairway. And the base of the temple also has a stone snake head. Now, I didn't see what the symbolism, like what the meaning behind the serpent was or anything, but I thought that was crazy because they went into more of just how they implemented astronomy into their architecture in this city. And it was really crazy. If anybody has the opportunity to Google it, they were so educated in astronomy. And I'm always so intrigued whenever you hear that like ancient peoples knew so much about that, because it's like, how?
Yeah.
Because then you look at like what we know, and I know we know a lot, but compared to what the capabilities that we have and just like the technology that we have compared to what they had,
Yeah.
it's like, how did they figure that out
Right.
with a rock and a stick? Like, how did they do that?
Is there also, and I don't know if you found it doing your research on Chichen Itza, but isn't there also discussion that might have been an alien
Yeah, like a
colony
land.
as well, or landmark as well?
Yeah, they did. There was a couple hypotheses on that, and I see it.
Yeah.
I see it because I didn't really see where it said what happened to the people there.
Didn't they just disappear and no one knows why? I
You're
don't think
probably
there was
right.
ever, unless it was hypothesized that they were killed by a volcano or something like that. But I'm pretty sure from what I remember about Chichen Itza, it was they're just gone and no one knows why.
I did see some of the hypotheses about it being possibly aliens, but we'll get to the next. Okay, so I do agree that Chichen Itza should be a wonder of the world.
Agreed.
We just don't have enough answers.
Right.
Okay, third one is Petra. This is in Jordan. It is a remote valley, one of the places where Moses struck a rock and water gushed forth.
That was Petra?
Yes.
Huh. Okay.
The Nabateans, and I might be pronouncing that wrong, chiseled dwellings, temples, and tombs into the sandstone, and they constructed a water system that allowed lush gardens and farming. When the city was booming, the population was 30,000, but then the city began to decline as trade routes shifted. An earthquake in 363 CE and another one in 551 resulted in Petra being abandoned, and it was rediscovered in 1912, which was for some reason ignored by archaeologists until the late 20th century. Now, everything that I saw on Petra, I don't really think that it should fall on the seven wonders of the world.
I'm looking at pictures of it now. Honestly, first of all, I had no clue that it was Petra in which Moses struck the rock and water came out. Is that factual?
Supposedly.
Okay.
Supposedly.
So, right. So I'm looking at pictures of it now. I feel like it would fall into the seven ancient wonders of the world. I don't know. When you start looking at this and you start comparing it to the other items on Jaden's list that she's going to discuss, I don't think it's
I don't think
as
it
fantastic.
should fall on the list at all.
Neither the seventh ancient or the new.
No.
Why?
I looked at pictures of it and reading about it, just like you said, I can think of a couple other things in the world that should be on the list over Petra.
I think the other thing too, when you start looking at buildings, statues, etc., things that we're going to look at as we move forward, they're all standalone. Petra is built into the side of sandstone.
Right.
So it's going to stand either way. Don't get me wrong. I think the architecture is absolutely stunning. I love the story that supposedly Moses struck the rock there and water came out. I think it would be more fantastical if there was still water running to this day. But I kind of agree with you trying to compare this to what we're about to talk about. I don't know if I'm going to offend some people by saying this, but if we're talking about the architecture like this as a seventh wonder, wouldn't it technically be that Mount Rushmore would be a seventh wonder as well? Because we didn't have all the
The
tools and abilities and everything that
technology.
we have now. So, like, when they built Mount Rushmore, people died,
Yeah.
and they just had scaffolding and stuff. And no doubt, I'm sure people died when they were trying to build Petra, but that was off a hanging side of a cliff. They built Mount Rushmore. This is just chiseled into rock and you can run in and out.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm off my soapbox.
But anyway, moving on to the next one. I don't think that Petra should be on the list, personally.
Agreed.
Next one, we have Machu Picchu in Peru. It was discovered in 1911 and thought to be home to the Virgins of the Sun, who were women who lived in convents under a vow of chastity. But others think it was likely a pilgrimage site or a royal retreat. This was a funny fact. So one big thing about Machu Picchu that makes it so fantastical is there were pre-Columbian ruins found that were nearly intact. So historians and whoever studies that stuff were able to really understand the pre-Columbian times a little bit better.
Yeah.
And then in the year 2000, the little city place was used for a beer commercial. And a crane that was holding an ad, the chain snapped on it. The ad fell and it cracked a monument. And that's why
Whoa.
we don't fuck around.
With Machu Picchu.
Or with just historical stuff at
Right.
all.
That's why Chichen Itza isn't in a beer commercial either.
Yeah, right? That's why it literally was funny because the article that I was reading with this, it was like there have been a lot of discussions about what Machu Picchu was used for and
Yeah.
stuff. And it was like, one thing that we do know is it should absolutely never be used for a beer commercial. And I was like, oh my God. Is Machu Picchu significant anywhere in the Bible?
No.
It makes you wonder if maybe it had some kind of biblical background to it, or because I also didn't find a time that this was built. But like I said, guys, when I do this research, I don't do a super deep dive. This is just meant to brief. We are not a historical podcast. We are a philosophical one. So
Right.
the facts are just here
And we're
so that we
interpreting
can
them.
show that, yeah, just to
Yes.
show that like we did look into it and we're not just talking out of our asses, but 75% of it is talking out of our asses.
Agreed.
So Machu Picchu, I think that it should be on the list just because there's not a lot of answers to it. I didn't see where there was specific people identified as to who built it. The use for it is being discussed.
I'm on the fence.
In the year, I also didn't
Right.
find the year.
I'm on the fence because when I think of a seventh wonder of the world, I think of something that humans or whatever created, and it's something that, first of all, we shouldn't have been able to do maybe at that time, but something that is just so like awe-inspiring. And guys, I've never been personally to Machu Picchu. I highly doubt that I'll ever end up getting there in my life. If we do, awesome. But I don't know, I'm on the fence because I feel like, yeah, it's really cool. It's these old ruins. As I'm looking at pictures, it's amazing to me that there's these flat areas. Everything is so dimensional.
Mm-hmm.
And that is extremely impressive. But again, you look at, I'm trying to compare it to things. You look at like the Pyramid of Giza. Giza is still standing. There's nothing wrong with Giza. It's almost like nothing touched Giza. Should Giza still be on the new Seven Wonders of the World list? We can always table it if you want, and we could talk about it at the end.
See, the way that I view them, the old versus the new, is the whole reason why they wanted to make a new list is because they were like, the only one that's still standing of the old list is Giza. And they were like, so we should probably have ones that are still standing. And there are so many great places I think that could be on the seven wonders of the world.
Yes.
And I think that the reason why they didn't put Giza on it again is it is stapled on the ancient one, so it will always remain as a wonder.
Fair.
So it doesn't necessarily need to be carried over into the new because it will always be stapled and
Yeah.
will always be like
It'll still be an OG. It'll
it
forever be an
is. It
OG.
is the
Yeah.
OG.
Yeah.
And the thing with it too is why did we pick seven? Seven wonders of the world. Why not 10?
I don't know. I'm wondering if they're just sticking with the number 7 because that's what the ancient philosophers and travelers
I
deemed
think
it to
they
be.
should do another vote.
I agree.
See, when I think of a wonder, I like when we don't have all the facts of something. I like that because when I hear the word wonder, it makes me wonder. It makes me be like, oh, we must not know a lot
Yeah.
or we must still be uncovering this stuff. But when you're referring to something as a wonder and then you have almost every single hitting every bullet point
Yes.
of it, I'm like, okay, there's not much to wonder about.
For me, it's I wonder how they built that. That's might be in layman's terms, but honestly, guys, I want it to be when I'm thinking of a wonder, I want it to be so impressive that it's like, how the hell did we create such a thing? How did we manage? Right?
I kind of agree with you too. Like, how did we do that? You look at Giza and you're like, oh my, seriously, how did we do that?
Yeah.
And then even some of the ones that we hit on the new ones, I'm trying to think of the ancient ones and I'm like blanking on them completely.
So we had the Gardens of Babylon, we had the Temple of Artemis, the mausoleum guy, and then we had the lighthouse.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now, see, those make me wonder, like, how did they do that? Because I think almost, if not all of those ones were BCE.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, so we don't have any real understanding of how they were building that stuff back then. And even the materials that they were using, too. And we look at the tools that we have found that we think that they had, and it's like you were building this
You had
with
a
this.
Yeah, you had a rock and a stick.
Yeah, you were like carving out of marble and bronze, and that's crazy to me. So it makes me wonder that where some of these newer ones that were built a little bit, I don't want to say recently, but compared to the ancient ones recently, I'm like, we know how we did that. Next one is Christ the Redeemer
Oh, I love this one.
in Brazil.
Mm.
Stands atop Mount Concavado, was built just after World War I, was designed by the Heitor de Silva Costa. Once again, I might be pronouncing these wrong. Apologies, not meant to offend. Carlos Oswald and Paul Landowski. The construction began in 1926 and was completed 5 years later. He is 98 feet tall, not including his base, which is 26 feet tall, and he has outstretched arms which measure 92 feet long. He is made of reinforced concrete and covered in approximately 6 million tiles. He is often struck by lightning, and in 2014, the tip of his right thumb was damaged during a storm.
Wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So, Christ the Redeemer, everyone, is a giant statue of Christ on the top
Yes.
of a mountain. If you look in pictures, it is quite grand to see. But personally, I don't think it belongs on the list of wonders.
See, I do.
Really?
I think that this is so fantastical, so spiritual. I feel like if I was actually ended up in Brazil,
You would be.
and I would probably end up crying. And I know that sounds absolutely ridiculous, and everybody's like, "But Sarah, you're a Christian, I guess, if you want to call it." Again, I go spiritual because I don't agree with everything, but and and you're a gay, and it's like, no, I think this is absolutely just a lot of meaning behind it, at least for me. And I think to other people that have some sort of religious ties to Christ or is some religious in some way, this is just absolutely incredible to me.
I think it's cool that we are viewing the whole purpose of the Seven Wonder differently. Like,
Yeah.
I think it's giving us two different takes. Just the only reason why I don't think it belongs on the Seven Wonders, and like I said, I like when we don't have all the facts. We have all the facts to this guy. We know everything. Like,
He's not making you wonder.
he was only built in 1926. He's
Yeah.
almost celebrating his 100th birthday. Look at that.
Go Christ.
Yeah, we just have all the facts, and I like whenever there is gaps and we don't know everything. I think it's definitely a fantastic statue, I guess you could call it. I think it's fantastic. I think it should fall on some other list, maybe not necessarily a wonder of the world. I don't know.
See, you're kind of on the fence, just like I was with Machu Picchu.
I'm on the fence because now I'm thinking if the whole world were to be abandoned or people were to die off for whatever reason and some other kind of life form were to land here, just like our ancient peoples, we don't have all the facts of what they were doing back then. And if that were to happen again, either, I don't know, we adapted and evolved and just moved around, and then 500,000 years down the road, they're coming back and they're discovering, they see Christ the Redeemer standing there.
Yeah.
I can see why they would be like, oh my God,
Yeah.
what is that? What were they doing back then? I guess I just don't know how it's supposed to be viewed.
See, I love that logic. Maybe that's how we need to start thinking about it. So if you think about all of humanity dies off, all that's left is whatever we created. Another species or life form comes down and they're looking at all these different things. They're like, what the fuck? What the fuck? With that logic, I definitely feel like Wall of China would be on there. The pyramids.
I feel like
Christ.
everything would be on there at
Right.
that point.
The Statue
Even
of Liberty.
our fucking cookie cutter houses now would probably be on there.
Yeah, they'd find a church somewhere or something like that.
Right.
This is the seventh wonder.
If we are using that logic, which I think fits, and I only came to that conclusion because I really thought of the phrase wonder of the world. That makes sense to me. If it wasn't us viewing it, if it was maybe people down the line from us, or it was some kind of different species altogether,
Yeah.
were to land here and were to look at trying to study our world, if they saw a giant statue of Christ, first of all, they would probably be like, who the fuck? And I'm sure they would be able to determine that is some kind of god they worshipped.
Or they thought of it as like the president of Brazil.
Oh my God. Well, I guess it depends on how, another planet views everything.
Right.
If they have gods or what they think. So, yes, if we're using that logic, then I think Christ the Redeemer belongs on the list. If we're not, I think it could be replaced with something else.
Fair enough.
Okay, next one is the Colosseum in Rome. Was built between 71 AD and 80 AD, the first century, by the order of Emperor Vespasian. Once again, ignore my pronunciation. It is 620 feet by 513 feet, and it has a complex system of vaults. It can hold up to 50,000 spectators. Well, it could at the time when it was still whole.
Yeah.
It could hold up to 50,000 spectators. They held gladiator fights and men battling animals, and sometimes they even pumped it with water for mock naval engagements. Christians were thrown to lions there, which that is debated, though. I don't know where they got that from, but that is actually debated. And approximately 500,000 people have died in the Colosseum. And so many animals were captured and killed there that certain species actually went extinct.
Wow.
I feel like we have a lot of knowledge on the Colosseum.
Yeah.
But I personally still think that it should be on the 7 Wonders of the World. Just because what the fuck were we doing? Actually, what the fuck were we doing? No, literally. It was literally like the first stadium.
It was. I think it definitely belongs on this list.
I think it's crazy that they pumped it with water. Like they would do boat fights.
Yeah.
Naval
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
What?
It was their catch-all. Any event, head to the Coliseum. And isn't it funny to think that this is what we based our stadiums of today off of? We didn't come up with any sort of better
design.
We looked at this and we said, hey, this is fantastic. You're right, because you can see from every single corner. Well, there aren't any corners because it's a circle, but you can see the action from anywhere that you're sitting. And the fact that they knew to build it as a circle, Jaden's crying right now because I said it's a circle, is just amazing.
The way you said it. It was the way you said that. You could see from every corner. And then the realization you just had. You said, well, there are no corners. It's a circle.
Please excuse me, guys. It's a little early this morning. But
You can see it from every corner.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I think, and even pictures of the Colosseum, and they've done like modern renditions of what it must have looked like when there was a gladiator fight or
Yeah.
whenever there was like a naval fight. And it's crazy because, like you said, just like sports, it literally was the equivalent of sports because stadium would be full, 500,000 spectators in there to watch some men fight
Yeah.
on half of a little buggy.
Yeah.
That's crazy. I definitely think that the Colosseum belongs on the list.
Yeah. No, 100% I agree.
I don't think we have much to talk about with the Colosseum. Just I feel like everyone knows what the Colosseum is and knows what it was used for, so I don't have much to say about it.
Nope, me neither. We
Okay.
can agree.
We will go to the last one, which is the Taj Mahal in India. So it was built by Emperor Shah Jahan to honor his wife Mumtaz Mahal, who died in 1631, giving birth to their 14th child.
Oh.
May her soul rest in peace. It took 22 years to build and 20,000 workers between the years of 1632 and 1648. It has an immense garden with a reflecting pool. It was built of white marble and features semi-precious stones and geometric and floral patterns. And Shah Jahan actually wished to have his own mausoleum made out of black marble, which would be situated right next to his wife's. But he was deposed of. I don't know if this word was supposed to say disposed, but on the website it said deposed of by his son. So I'm assuming it meant disposed, but I'm also not going to look it up still. Whatever that means. He was deposed of. I probably sound illiterate. It probably is disposed.
It is disposed because
It was
Yeah.
disposed of.
deposed is inclined or willing. It's an adjective for all those grammarly correct people.
The grammar,
Grammarly
please.
is not even a word, but whatever.
It's a website. Grammarly.
We're on a roll today.
Right? He was disposed of by his sons before any work began. The Taj Mahal, and I think it's beautiful. I think it's a gorgeous building. I love like the rounded tops at the top. You know how it not fully round.
The spires.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it is a gorgeous building. I'm not sure I think it belongs on the wonders.
Really?
Once again, if we are viewing it as ancient or different civilization came down, other people were discovering the planet. Yeah, I think it belongs on the list. But no, just because it's a tomb.
Are you tired of tombs?
I
being
am.
Wonders?
I kind of am. Yeah, like damn, just let them rest in peace. Leave them go. So she was buried in there. She was set to rest in there. And you can still like go and tour it. I don't know. It just seems a little disrespectful to me.
Yeah. How would you like someone touring your tomb?
Yeah, well that's what and we'll talk about death and what we think about all that in like later episodes, other seasons, but I don't know, me personally, like even Giza, and I mean I think being able to go there and take pictures of it is one thing. Being able to actually go inside is another story.
Yeah.
Being able to go to the Taj Mahal and take pictures of it and everything, great, I'm all for that. Yeah, keep it alive, post it, visit it, maintain it. But going inside, I feel like it was never intended for that
Right.
because at the end of the day, it is a tomb and it was someone's final resting place. Same thing with all the Egyptians, they're digging up all these mummies. Leave it go.
Yeah.
Leave that there. We already know about mummies. Stop digging them up. Leave them where they were laid to rest, especially because those people were so spiritual and stuff,
Yeah.
and their rituals. They had rituals to burying. And a lot of the Egyptians were like, when they died, if they were like great or something, they were like, oh, this curse, there's always like Egyptian
curse.
curses. Yeah, like if this person goes into my tomb, like, Pharaoh Tut,
Yeah.
he had something like that.
This is a little off topic, but they're taking like the mummies and trying to reconstruct them so that they understand what their voices sound like. I don't really care what King Tut or any other pharaoh's voice sounds like. It's a corpse.
Right. No,
You
that's
know,
what are we
it's
gonna do
okay.
with that information?
Right. We don't need to know. And I think those are dollars that have been misspent.
See, that freaks me out. Leave it there. They had their ritual. They wrapped them up the way that they do. They did,
Preserve them.
yeah, they
Yeah.
preserved their body and they laid them to rest. And the whole intent is to leave them there. And I think, okay, if you find the tomb, cool, you found it. Do I think that they were meant to be found at all? No. Do I think we need to stop looking in Egypt for people's tombs? Yeah, because essentially we're all grave robbers at that point. And what are we doing with that information? We've learned enough. We don't need to keep
Yeah.
digging up their dead bodies and being like, oh, let's run tests on it.
Yeah.
We don't need to. We know what they looked like. We know what they were doing. We know who they are.
There's enough artifacts to show us and tell us about the culture that existed back then, who was Pharaoh at the time, who's in
Right.
what tomb.
Like
Let it be.
Cleopatra. Have you heard what's going on with Cleopatra?
No.
I actually think this is really interesting. Cleopatra, huge Egyptian staple. She said that no man would ever find her grave. Supposedly, she said that. Supposedly, that is a quote from her. I don't know where they pulled that from because I don't know if they can actually pull a quote from her. But they said that her words were that no man will ever find her tomb. And no one has found her tomb. But there is this lady, archaeologist or whatever you would call her, who has come really close, I guess, to finding Cleopatra's tomb. And ironically enough, she looks really similar to what they think Cleopatra looked like.
Freaky.
And there's a lot of conspiracies going around of her, and they're like, oh my God, that is literally Cleopatra reincarnated.
So she's going to go find her old tomb?
That's what people are saying. Because then there's like some guy who she's working with who keeps trying to shut down all of her ideas and basically prevent her from finding it, which I feel like every woman knows how that feels. So I think that's crazy. But still, if an ancient person is saying, no one will ever find my tomb. And I'm sure whenever she said no man, she didn't mean a woman either,
Yeah,
she meant
just
no.
period.
Yeah. No one will find my tomb. Period. End of story. Why are we looking? We're
Right.
taking that as like, bet. Leave her go. We don't need to dig her up. We put them in the ground for a reason. Like, how would they feel if I went to the local cemetery, just dug someone up and was like, it's for science?
Right. I just want to know what their voice sounded like.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. I pull them up and I start taking their hair and I'm like, I just wanted to see if they had Neanderthal DNA in
Right.
them. Like, no, I would be arrested.
Right. Grave robber.
But it's fine. It's fine when they're doing it to the ancient people. So tying this back to the Taj Mahal, no, I think it's a tomb, and I don't think that it was meant to basically be not invaded, but invaded.
See, I'm still on the line of whether this is a seventh wonder or not, because I do think this is absolutely fantastical, especially for being built in like the 1600s.
Right.
It's a beautiful building. But at the same time, as we're going through these, I'm still thinking about other landmarks throughout the world that aren't on this list. Like when we were talking about the Colosseum, what about the Leaning Tower of Pisa? That's not on the list. What about, and I know people probably don't think like anything in the United States is a seventh wonder, but Mount Rushmore, the Statue of Liberty, right? We talk about Christ the Redeemer as this fantastical statue. Well, I mean, Lady Liberty's pretty freaking big.
See, the Statue of Liberty, the only reason why I feel like it couldn't be on a seven wonder, and this is just taking on the take of other people were to come down, humanity's dead, that take, they would never know that it came elsewhere. They would have assumed that we assembled it in New York.
Right.
They would not have known that it was transported so far.
Yeah.
And then plopped here. I'm sure they would definitely be like, wow, but the story of it actually being like transported is like what makes her so grand too, I think. Well, I'm not saying she's not grand. She is. She's beautiful. But the fact that she was transported across the planet, that's insane.
I think about the Eiffel Tower too, because again, that's a landmark that I feel like a lot of people have a goal to visit in life. Every female I feel like I talk to, I want to go to Paris. I want to take a
Right.
picture in front of the Eiffel Tower. Hey, good for you by all means. If that's something that you feel like you'd want to see, me personally, I'd rather go see Christ the Redeemer in Brazil than the Eiffel Tower. But still, I'm thinking about these other things and I'm trying to make the comparison to the new list that we have now that was curated by people with an opinion and comparing it to everything else. And it's just like some of these things just to me aren't as fantastical. Now, I'm not saying that the Taj Mahal isn't. I think it is. But when you try to compare it to everything else, it's like these other items are pretty fantastic as well. When Jaden and I were talking about doing this episode, we were talking about Easter Island. And both of us raised an eyebrow because why isn't that on the seven wonders of the world? I feel like that should be number one.
Me too. I feel like it should have been on the ancient one too. I don't even know if we have a time that they were built.
Right. I think too, since the ancient one was based off of Roman and Greek travelers, they're not going to
Mm-hmm.
see Easter Island, but
That's
we
true.
know it exists.
You know,
But
they probably didn't even know.
right. But the Easter Island heads are just so wondrous and fantastical. They deserve to be on this list. And the fact that they're not, that's what kind of makes me raise an eyebrow. That's why I'm not very sure with Machu Picchu. That's why I'm not
Well,
very
see,
sure with
that's
the
why
Taj
I look
Mahal.
on. That's why, like, I look at Petra too. Like Petra, I like Machu Picchu just because I like the mystery to it. But I'm on the fence with the Taj Mahal. I'm on the fence with Petra.
See, I'd rather see them remove Petra and put Easter Island
No,
here.
1000% me too. Because they said that how many people were in this vote? 100 million votes. You're telling me no one thought of the Easter Island? Like the heads? No one thought of that?
And
Or
we
at least
knew
not
they
enough people thought of it?
right, and we knew they existed because this survey was done between 2000 and 2007, right?
Yeah.
So we had 7 years to get our facts straight, but
Right.
nobody thought to add Easter Island on. That's a wonder. That deserves to be at the top of the list. In my opinion, I feel like Easter Island is just such a wonder. It is more wondrous than the pyramids.
Oh, I think it's more wondrous than the pyramids. I think, honestly, I think about the Easter Island heads often. I was actually pricing going there. I don't know if you remember
Yeah, I
that.
remember.
And maybe people are overlooking it because not a lot of people have gone and seen them, but it is in a really remote area and there's nothing close to it. It is just,
So do you have to fly like directly into the island in order to get there? Do you have to take a helicopter?
it's somewhere in Europe you have to fly to and then you can fly there because the closest city to it, I believe, is Chile.
Yeah.
And even Chile is almost 2,000 miles away from it.
Wow.
Yeah, extremely remote. It is 2,182 miles away from Chile. So it is an extremely remote little island, but I feel like that's what makes it even more like wondrous
Yeah.
is how it's so far away from anything.
Yeah.
And honestly, I was obviously digging into it and looking into it, and I'm not going to say what because that'll be its own episode, but we'll just have to talk about it in another episode.
Yeah.
I can't even say anything about it. There's a lot of interesting and mysterious things about Easter Island.
Yeah.
And I agree with Sarah. I think that it is a staple of humanity, and I think that it needs to be on both the ancient and the new wonders of the world.
Just wanted to do the call out there because Jaden and I do plan on having Easter Island be its own episode because it's not on the wonders list. It deserves to be there. But to close out this episode, final thoughts on the 7 new wonders of the world.
The new 7 wonders of the world, even though I don't agree with all of them, I think that doesn't mean that I don't think that any of them are least or less fantastic than
Yeah.
the ancient ones. I think that they all have their own kind of mystery and a really unique story to all of them. I wish we would leave the tombs alone, but Other than that, I agree with about 4 out of 7 of them.
I agree with a few, but I think that we're to a point now in society that we need to have a list that's greater than 7
Oh,
because there are
definitely.
so many wonderful things that are out there that humanity has created, things that have a lot of meaning. And I agree with you. I think that we need to be at least at maybe 10 just because of everything that we have out there. Just my opinion. But guys, thank you so much for taking the time to listen. We greatly appreciate you. Again, feel free to leave comments. For now, I'm Sarah,
And I'm Jaden.
and this is the Riddles of Reality.